Hi Noshers, my name is Micah, the host of Not Your Bubby's Nosh, a conversation about your favorite and least favorite Jewish foods, your go-to source for holiday meal inspiration, and a place to discuss and kvetch about which bubby made it best.
This podcast is supported by the Newman School at the Talmud Torah of St. Paul, where academic excellence meets Jewish values, prioritizing small classes, experiential learning, and moral development. Now enrolling grades K through 5. Learn more at ttsp.org/Newman.
Today, I'm talking challah, what it means, why we braid it, and what makes a great challah. First, what is challah? Technically, it's literally any bread that's made for like a ritual purpose. So it doesn't have to be braided. It doesn't have to be special. It could literally be Wonder Bread. But as long as it's for a ritual, it's challah to us. But truthfully, for a lot of us, challah isn't just a bread. When we think of challah, it's something that is like a delicacy. It's served only on Shabbat. It's made with love, and it's literally made into the world's best French toast on a Saturday. But challah could literally mean a piece of white bread that we just like say something for or say a blessing for on a Friday night. It doesn't have to be homemade. It doesn't have to be fancy. It doesn't have to be anything. So if you are eating bread or a bread alternative on a Friday night, that is literally challah enough. Just like be grateful for that challah. You've done it right. So now that I'll get off my little challah podium, there's more to challah than just the shape and the braiding. It is not only delicious, and it is a show-stopping masterpiece of braids and twists and turns, and it makes Friday a little bit sweeter. You see these challahs online. I know that I follow a bunch of challah braiding accounts on Instagram, and my goodness, if I ever learned to braid challah like that, I'm quitting my day job and just making this art full time. People are making the most intricate braids that I will never master, but like good on them for getting that because that looks hard. And I will say that I've been experimenting over the past year. It was my 2022 goal to make a challah a week. That includes a babka. So it can be a babka, a challah, or something like that every week. Not necessarily even on a Friday, but just to get into the habit and ritual of making challah as a way to, I guess, reflect a little bit, to connect, to signify the week, and to prove that it doesn't have to be something scary to make. Growing up, my mom always was a little like cautious about making challah. I don't know if cautious is the right word, but it felt like a big ordeal to make a challah. You know, a working mom, and where do you find the time to do that during the week? And having that challah felt like this huge deal. And I really want to try demystifying that, where you can make a weeknight one bowl challah. It can be done within a matter of hours. You can pre-make it. It can be made any day of the week, and just really take out some of the barriers to making a weekly challah. And not only that, of trying to make it a little easier, but trying to get a little creative where challah can be literally whatever you want it to be. Just this week, I made a fig and fennel challah, which was delicious. We're still working on that. I love making a babka. I've been doing garlic bread challah, challah buns, cinnamon roll challahs, coffee cake challahs. If it can be in a dough, I am making it into a challah. And it's been so much fun to experiment and take some of the pressure of making a challah off, because I can make it fit into whatever flavor, dish, or anything I want. There's so much room for creativity. And we typically know a challah as a braided bread with 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, or even 12 strands. My personal favorite is the 4-strand because it feels fancy, but also like tests my abilities on how to braid it. But it's not just so that the challah looks pretty. It's not just cosmetic. It's also significant and symbolic of different things, which I've learned, which is pretty cool. And I feel like that's such a big thing about Judaism, is that it's never just there for show. There's always a story. There's always a symbolic meaning. There's always a question that comes with every single thing we do. So I had to ask the question, what do all the strands mean? So a 3-strand challah is thought to represent truth, peace, and justice. I don't know. That felt really that felt weird for me. And so I also saw that it was taken as past, present, and future, which I felt like that was more applicable and relatable, at least to my life. A 4-strand challah is thought to represent the matriarchs, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah, which I love that. It's such a ritualistic thing to do every week. And, I'm just like saying a big old thank you to all the women in my life who have impacted me and influenced me. So I'm going to keep on with my 4-strand braids instead of the 6-strand challah is symbolic of a 6-day work week. And then obviously you take Shabbat off. So a little bit more literal on that one. And then I loved the 8-strand. It's thought to be significant in terms of new beginnings for future. And funnily enough, it's also connected to like the timing of a bris. I don't know. I was on a deep dive into challah, and it took a weird turn at this point where challah was being compared to a bris, and kind of turned me off of challah for a little bit, truthfully. Regardless, during Rosh Hashanah, which is coming up this year in 2022, it's the end of September. And that's when we typically have round challah. And that's symbolic of continuity without a beginning or an end. And my great-grandmother Frida was known for her round challahs, and she would like make a challah crown on top. And they were just these beautiful showpieces. And that's something that I always grew up looking forward to when my grandmother would make them. And just something like that really was a source of pride and joy for my family, that my Baba Frida was like so gifted at making these challahs for Rosh Hashanah. The way that we braid it or shape it is totally dependent. And there's actually one that we make right after Passover that is supposed to give us good fortune for yourself and your family. And it's actually called a shissel key. And it's a challah that's braided into like the shape of a key. And actually, I only learned about this a year or two ago when I started to see it online and on Instagram. And it was so interesting to see all these challahs just like made into these massive braided keys. It kind of reminded me of like how a king cake has like a little baby inside of it, or like a dollar wrapped in something, or like a coin wrapped in something. And then whoever gets that gets the good luck. And this is kind of similar to that concept. So regardless if you do 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 12 keys, rounds, whatever way you shape your challah, I love that the braids kind of look like intertwined arms. Like it's kind of like a warm hug, meaning love. And it's also traditional. Parents cover your ears, children cover your ears. That on Shabbat, that's when couples are meant to be intimate. And so then you're having your challah and there's like intertwined arms. I don't know. That felt like a stretch for me. I feel like my challah is not an aphrodisiac in any way, because when I get through half that challah in one sitting, there is nothing I want to do less than that. I just want to lie down and sit in my challah coma, in a challah coma personally. So I don't know. But if you feel differently, please let me know what your secret is. So I was wondering, like, is challah something that all Jews eat? Of course, I grew up with it. My husband grew up with it. And I come from an Ashkenazi family. He comes from more of a Sephardic family. And because challah doesn't have to be the braided bread that we see, I was curious about like where that part came from, because that's the more classic challah that we see on the grocery stores and after Shabbat services and in the media. So the braided challah is more of an Eastern European bread, and it's unique in that it has a higher fat content, kind of similar to like a brioche dough, and that comes from egg yolks and oil. So there's no milk or butter, meaning it's parve. We can eat it with dairy or meat meals. So it's easy depending on whatever you're having for dinner that night. So challah is really known for being like a rich bread. And that's why I say that it makes the best French toast in the world the day after for Saturday morning breakfast or Sunday morning breakfast. Honestly, it makes a killer grilled cheese. And the things that make challah unique when we're talking about the braided challah is that it needs time to rest. And it also gives us that time to pause while it's resting. We're doing a ritualistic braiding if you're braiding, if you that's your thing with challah. And it really helps you symbolically and literally kind of tie up and conclude the week when you're braiding it. So I don't know, Shabbat's like a time of rest. We're supposed to like chill out after the week. And maybe challah is like the perfect way to like start that relaxing process while we're shaping and kneading and kind of getting our frustrations out from the week. I've had a really great time making challah and experimenting with challah, and I found it to be so relaxing and also like a way to connect with my family in a way that feels authentic to me, not necessarily. It doesn't mean I'm doing like prayers every Friday night for it. It doesn't mean I'm doing all of that because that's not the way that I was raised either. But it's more of just like a way to honor Shabbat in a way that feels good and doable and sustainable for me as a 30-something-year-old married professional in a big city and that does all sorts of different things. And I think that that's what I've learned this year from, I guess, my first 8 months of making a weekly challah is that there's no right or wrong way to do these things. And just having the intention of doing something for Shabbat or for honoring your Jewish culture is totally enough. I'll leave you with some tips that I have for making a great challah. And so I guess let's start with the ingredients. So I personally think that higher quality ingredients make a tastier challah. So getting the eggs that you like using, the eggs that you would want to eat. I love using olive oil because I love the taste and kind of the golden color that it gives to my challah, but using an oil that has a nice taste or tastes like nothing, of course, like a vegetable oil, grapeseed, or even avocado oil. Using a bread flour is going to give you a higher protein content in your flour, meaning more gluten formation. So that's how you get that beautiful gluten strand and that crumb that you want from your challah. So using those high quality ingredients, giving yourself enough time to make it. So making sure that you're not rushing the rising process. I love to make my dough the night before, cover it and pop it in the fridge. And then as it comes to room temp the next day, it's perfectly risen. So then you don't have to wait around and you can literally whip it up with a dough up in 20, 30 minutes before you go to bed, pop it in the fridge. And then the next morning, braid and bake. And then you have challah on the table within less than an hour in the morning. So I love doing that and just giving yourself enough time to get into it, to make sure it rises properly so that it's this big, beautiful, fluffy thing on your table. Another tip is that you have to give it somewhere warm to rise unless you're going to do a cold rise overnight. So something I like to do is I'll cover up my challah in a bowl, my challah dough, and then put on the back of my stove as I'm doing other things. That's the hottest spot in my kitchen. You can also turn your oven on, like start preheating it to like 200 and then turn it right off and then put your challah in there so it's nice and warm. I met someone a while ago who turns on her dryer, is it? She doesn't like, once it's like done a cycle, nothing inside, obviously, nothing inside. Once it's done a cycle in there, then she puts her challah covered in plastic wrap or her dough covered in plastic wrap in a bowl in there and closes the door because apparently it's like the perfect temperature. I don't know. I didn't try it myself, but she swears by it. That's Kelly at Just a Taste. She's a big food blogger. So that's one way to do it. And then the next one would be that challah dough is meant to be a little sticky. You don't want it to be too dry. As dough rises and sits, it changes so much. So if you feel like it's a little sticky, really resist the urge to add too much flour because the second, like you want it to be tacky, it shouldn't be gloopy, but you should be able to you should still be able to touch it and nothing comes on to your finger, but it should still be wet, more wet than you think. So if you add too much flour, you're going to come up with a really dry, flat dough that it just isn't going to taste the same. It's not going to be rich like the challah that you're looking for. And lastly, braiding can be frustrating. Braiding can be uneven, and that's totally okay. Know that beauty is only skin deep. Beauty is only skin deep when it comes to challah. So just give yourself a little kindness and be a little gentle on yourself if it's an ugly loaf, because truthfully, the second we rip that puppy open with our hands and slather butter or dip it in oil or into your cholent or whatever you're dipping in, it's going to be delicious. So hopefully that gives you some good tips to start your own challah. I've got a great 1 bowl weeknight challah recipe that is the base for just about all of my challah recipes. If you want that, head on over to my website, www.noshwithmicah.com, or shoot me an email at micah@noshwithmicah.com, and I'll send that right to you. And of course, on my website, I have literally dozens of challah recipes, everything from cornbread challah, coffee cake challah, cinnamon roll challah, pizza babka. Oh gosh, challah that's been braided into everything bagels. I've got a gluten-free challah. Pretty much any challah you want, I've got on there. And if I don't have it on there, please let me know and I will add it to my list of things to make so that I can make you your dream challah too. Thank you so much for listening. I've got to go take my challah out of the oven. I hope that you learned all about challah in new and exciting ways and inspired you to maybe try it out on your own. And you know what? If you don't feel like making your own homemade dough, I am not judging you if you get a bag of pizza dough from your local grocery store and just braid that. That is challah. Not Your Bubby's Nosh is a part of the Jew Folk Podcast Network and is produced by Jew Folk Inc. For more shows, check out tcjewfolk.com/podcast. If you've got questions, email me at micah@noshwithmicah.com.